Hello, everyone. My name's Ron, and this is audio, um, the first audio entry into the Virtual Gadflies blog. I figured I'd speak this one rather than write it out and post it because I don't know. I personally just prefer to talk rather than to write when I'm talking about things like this a little bit more freeform. So this is going to be about history, and this is going to be about the place history has in our society, the place it maybe should have, a little bit of the place it used to inhabit, and why I think it's useful. So here we go. I began to think about the place in education that history currently holds when I was having a conversation with a fellow grad student about imperialism and economics in Vietnam. When I brought up the fact that China had been an imperial power and continues to be an imperial power in Vietnam, I was met with shock and surprise. I was met with even more shock when I explained that China had played an imperial role in Vietnam for longer than both the United States and France combined. And in fact, shortly after the Vietnam War and the US withdrawal, China had invaded communist North Vietnam. It took a lot of convincing for anyone to even begin to believe me. And what this conversation highlighted for me was the true fall from grace that history has undergone as a useful heuristic for understanding the present. Now, a heuristic is similar to an acronym. It's something, or not so much an acronym, but rather it is something that is used to denote something else, to help understand something else simply and quickly. The world and the people of today seem to be afraid of looking back and using our history to inform our views on what's going on in the world around us. Some may even say that today's society is not only afraid, but refuses to use history as a guiding compass through the troubles of our modern times. Even in places like universities, where history was once a central cornerstone of learning, the amount of illiteracy on the topic can be overwhelming. There are three reasons I can think to explain just why history has been pushed to the wayside as a useful heuristic. And they are gatekeeping, fact phobia, and pride. Many people are afraid to historicize what is going on in the world today for fear of being shut down by gatekeepers. Now, gatekeepers are not necessarily PhDs in history. In fact, most of them are the opposite of gatekeepers, welcoming people in to interact with our history and interact with the texts. A gatekeeper, however, could be your friend who has read every single book on ancient Rome, and the moment you try and make a comparison between what is going on in the US government today and what was going on near the end of the Roman Republic, shuts you down with a deluge of obscure facts that have nothing to do with your previous point, shuts you down by talking over you, by listening to the sound of their own voice recite everything they have memorized. This type of hostile atmosphere makes discussions of history in the context of our modern day unbearable, and this is due to bad faith fact spewers and, for lack of a better term, know-it-alls. It can be embarrassing to feel as though the person you are speaking to when you try and bring up a historical fact thinks you're an idiot for doing it, or thinks that simply because they know more than you about this topic that you shouldn't be able to speak on it. All of this bad faith has turned history into a topic that was once a cornerstone of almost all educational debate and understanding, into a club full of a few elite academics and a majority of Civil War obsessed fathers or Roman Empire obsessed friends. The second issue is fact phobia. Fact phobia is another reason history has fallen to the wayside. Fact phobia is defined as simply that, a fear of facts. Often history can seem like a daunting tool staring down lists of names, dates, and locations that are, in most cases, foreign to us in today's times. And it can make us feel like this is something that is impossible to memorize, impossible to grasp. This fear turns many off from even starting to dip their toes in the pool of historical knowledge, let alone begin to swim in it. There is a way around this, though, and that is, especially when using history to inform your views of the events of today, to focus on the broad trends and brushstrokes that can be seen throughout our shared timeline. There is no need to understand the minutiae, though I promise it can be fun if you give it time. But there is a need to understand the broader general trends that have created the world in which we live. Because do not be mistaken, people listening out there, these broader general trends continue to affect us today, same as they did in the past, and we are feeling the ripples of tidal waves made by empires thousands of years ago. Looking at the big picture rise and fall of empires and the interactions of different cultures, and just having a general idea of the progression of history, you will soon find that connecting the present with the past becomes both easier and more informative. One of the best examples of this is if you look at the effects of the transatlantic slave trade and how the ripples of that general trend that went on for hundreds of years continues to affect our world today. Same can be said for the Silk Road trading route. You could look at the Silk Road trading route and you could see China's one road policy that they're enacting as the attempted resurgence of that trading route into dominance. The final reason I want to talk about is pride. And this problem is definitely a bit more subjective, but I think it is true nonetheless. Today we feel as though we are smarter, better, and more moral than those humans who made up our history, who lived in the past. Why would we ever need to look to the past, we ask ourselves. We are so much more advanced than those who came before us. Today we have a sense of wanting to forget our sometimes embarrassing history and head full speed into the future where we believe things will be inevitably better. I'd urge those who feel this way to not judge the actors of the past so easily, and to instead acknowledge that yes, we have advanced in many ways, but we have not advanced past our own humanity, which has been present for the entirety of our species' existence. That which connects us to the past is not found in the cultures of the time, or the knowledge of the time, or the technology of the time, but rather it is the way in which we interact with the world, the problems we face, the decisions we have to make, and the drives that we all have. History is about human beings doing things, and though a lot has changed, we as humans have changed. And though a lot has changed, we as humans have changed very little. When it comes down to those base drives and instincts, we have barely changed at all. If we can stop ourselves from being too proud and recognize our common humanness and our shared personality with those of the past, our shared mental structures and culture, if we can stop ourselves from being too proud, we may be able to actually learn from the past rather than being ashamed and ignore it. I'd be amiss if I did not mention that there is a caveat to the use of history when talking about the problems we face today. The caveat is that nothing is truly ever one-to-one. The minutiae and details of the Peloponnesian War are not easily mapped onto the events of today, though some of the broader brushstrokes can inform us on the current state of international relations. Same as calling every one of America's long-standing wars our new Vietnam. This is too simplistic to be useful to inform us on what we should do or how we should think about an issue. There is a nuance in all situations, and history is a helpful heuristic to inform us on how we should look at and understand a current problem and what types of solutions we should strive for. But history is not a generic instruction manual to be thrown over top any problem and to provide the one-size-fits-all solution for that which affects us today. I'll close this off, this first entry of hopefully many, with the famous saying, "If we forget history, we are doomed to repeat it." I do enjoy this saying, but I do not think it's necessarily true. In my opinion, rather, I believe that we are doomed to always repeat history, regardless of whether we remember it or not. But I would rather remember it, so that when it does repeat, we can at least understand and be ready to meet the future head on. Hey everyone, I wanted to thank you all for listening, and please leave any comments or anything you'd like to hear about in the future. More than willing to talk about almost anything. Catch you all next time, and